When I was a young boy, I didn't see many aeroplanes. And the reason is because I grew up here. I spent my childhood here in Abu Dhabi. I grew up on Sheikh Hamdan Street. And this used to be a country that planes would just fly over. So what happened in the last 40 years? You joined global energy markets, attracted migrants from all over the world, built world-class infrastructure. If you build it, they will come. In short, you got connected, both internally and globally. What is happening today in the UAE is that it is becoming what I like to call a cities state. You're all familiar with the term city state. But a cities state is a place like Switzerland, where the different urban hubs share their comparative advantages and becomes a whole that is greater than the sum of their parts. And with Abu Dhabi's support and leadership over the last decades, that is what is happening here, with the various emirates uniting their infrastructure and graduating into a truly united federation. And as the UAE moves towards its 50th birthday, that vision is coming true. But this is not the only part of the world where that is happening. Remember that in the Arab world, the populations number in the millions and the economy's size into the billions. If you go over to East Asia, the populations are in the billions and the economies are sized in the trillions. And much of the reason for that is because they too are getting more connected. And that's particularly happening in the post-colonial East Asian demographics and geographies. Let me show you a couple of examples. Here on the right, you see Singapore and southern Malaysia and some of the islands of Indonesia. Starting in the 1970s, these three countries, which had hostile relations with each other during the early Cold War, decided that they would begin to master plan their geography, to connect their cities together. Even they had had such a legacy of animosity towards each other. And they created what's called a growth triangle. Economics is about the optimization of land, labor, and capital. A country like Singapore has very little land, very little labor, but lots of capital. Its neighbors, Indonesia and Malaysia, have a lot more land, a lot more labor, but less capital. They brought those forces together to set up special economic zones for shipbuilding, textiles, electronics, all sorts of areas, and to become a hub for global value chains. Let's take another example. In the last 20 years, particularly since the handover of Hong Kong from the British back to China in 1997, what's happened in the Pearl River Delta region of southern China, from Guangzhou in the north down to Hong Kong in the south, and you may have seen just 2 days ago in the front page of many newspapers in the world that a new bridge has opened up connecting Hong Kong to Shanghai to Macau, is that infrastructure has been used to take these smaller micro-geographies of cities that had historically been divided by different colonies and a different political and economic status, and to fuse them together into one united infrastructural mega-city cluster. Now, for many of us, we grew up hearing that the largest city in the world, the largest urban agglomeration in the world is Tokyo, right? Tokyo. But if you saw last year, The Economist had a major cover story, a survey of this area, the Pearl River Delta, and they said, here, this is now, with a population of more than 60+ million people, the largest city, the largest mega city in the world. And its economic size, even though if you were an astronaut, you wouldn't be able to see this from space, is nearing $2 trillion. To put it in perspective, that's almost the same size GDP as India today, which you can see from space. So what's the lesson here? Where urbanization, infrastructure investment, connectivity come together, that's how you really add value. Now, there's a long way to go in catching up. I praise the UAE for becoming this cities state, and there is a lot of progress that's been made to get on the map. Here's one example. This is a map showing you the cities that are ranked as the most globally connected cities in the world by various indicators that are put together by McKinsey or DHL or others. They rank cities by the volume of flows that pass through them: data, goods, services, capital, people, so forth. You can see that Hong Kong and Singapore are there. Before them, London and New York were on the map, and right there in the middle is Dubai. And again, over the decades, with Abu Dhabi's support, with Dubai's own ingenuity, what it has done is to place itself on that map amongst global cities as being a hub for all of these different categories of flows. The timing for this could not be better. Look at the geography of where Abu Dhabi and Dubai, what some of you like to call Abu Dubai, sits on this map. At the absolute center of what I call the global urban network civilization. This particular set of 50 to 60 megacity regions that really drive the world economy. The absolute centers of global production, value chains, financial clout, demographics, and so forth. And what all cities want more than anything else is to get connected to each other. That is how they enhance themselves. That is how they enhance their influence in the world. The city view of the world is very different from the political or territorial view of the world. It's not about imposing boundaries, it's about connecting across them. And you can see what this country has done as part of that vision. Look at the role of Emirates Airlines, Etihad Airlines, and their globe-spanning networks. Sovereign wealth funds of the UAE and others that invest capital all over the world. The influence of this country comes from leveraging its role in this connected network. And these are examples of a much broader pattern that is underway around the world, and that is the shift from thinking purely in terms of natural geography, political geography, towards functional geography, the geography of connectivity. For so long, for centuries, for millennia, power derived from the size of your territory, the volume of natural resources you possess, the size of your population alone, the security of your boundaries. Because we didn't live in a world with such a thorough coat of layers of connectivity, of transportation, energy, communications. But now we do. And that's what functional geography is. And to understand the world today, to understand not only its complexity, but how influence is exercised, we have to look at this layer, not just how big a country is or the size of its military. And so what this map of functional geography shows you is how to think about how power is exercised when boundaries are blurred. So let's put that in the Arab context. There is no official capital of the Arab region, but in functional terms, of course, there is. And it is this country. This is the country that sits at the hub of so much of the region's economic activity, diplomatic activity, commercial activity. In a purely political map, you can't simply decide who gets to be the capital of what. But in functional terms, the role you play matters more than simply what official political designations are. And that is, of course, a great responsibility. Because right now, the UAE is the eye of the storm. As Mina said, it is an oasis, if you will, in a time of very, very significant turbulence around the world. And the UAE has shown quite a bit of bravery, leadership in situations where it's contributing resources, whether it's Iraq, Egypt, Yemen, Libya, and so forth. But there's a lot more that needs to be done in order for the rest of the Arab region to benefit from what the UAE has done for itself, which is building this substantial internal connectivity to share resources for everyone's betterment. As we know, the World War I map, the map created by the Sykes-Picot agreements and subsequent agreements through World War II, that map is crumbling. But that was never the natural map of this part of the world, with all of your historical, linguistic, cultural commonalities. And in fact, the Arab region has always been the most urbanized part of the world. More than 90% of people in this region live in cities. The history of this region is the history of urban trading hubs and oases connected to each other. And that is the map that we have to build again today to overcome artificial boundaries, to share the water, and the energy, and food resources from where they are in abundance to where they are the most scarce. And the risk of not doing so is great. There could be another decade or more of conflicts, spillover of those conflicts, that could potentially burst the bubble that we enjoy here. And that is not a risk that we should want to take. Instead, we should focus on building what I call the Pax Arabia, right? The peace of the Arab world. It has been done before. If you look at this map of the 12th century Western Eurasia to Eastern Eurasia, with this region right in the center, you can see how significant a role this played as a crossroads of global commerce 1,000 years ago. Today, what's so significant about looking at this map is that right here in just Eurasia, you have 2/3 of the world's population, 2/3 of the world's GDP. So you must build this peaceful map or risk falling behind the rest of Asia. And indeed, this is Asia. You may have noticed I have not used the term Middle East so far today, and I don't plan to. And the reason is that this is no longer, or rather, this is much more than just a convenient way station, a stopover for British vessels on their way to the Far East. Geographically, this is West Asia. And in the 16th century, before colonialism, before the Cold War, this region was crucial to a thriving system of trade and commerce, cultural exchange between West Asia, South Asia, East Asia, and Central Asia along those Silk Roads. That was the greatest system the world has ever known. And it is in fact becoming such an Asian system again through forces like the Belt and Road Initiative, which I've mapped out for you here. You can see the planned transportation and energy corridors linking China, Southeast Asia, across Central Asia, Iran, Pakistan, through right here to this region. All of these lines, whether they are pipelines or railways or highways or internet cables, are most definitely going to be built. And so Asian connectivity is flourishing again. And here you can see more specifically how that applies to some of the newer modes of transportation. You can see, for example, aviation corridors. You can see the dense connectivity that is unfolding within and across the various subregions of Asia. And in fact, 9 of the 10 most intense aviation corridors or airline connections in the entire world are in Asia. 9 out of 10. Dubai is the hub for some of them, Hong Kong, Singapore, and others. So Asia is truly, truly coming together, and it requires a whole shift in our psychology here to not view this region as simply one that is a way station, if you will, but rather one that is central to this thriving Asian future. So I have a call to action, or several calls to action for you today in the spirit of not just talking about the future, but building it. And the first is to, again, spread your connectivity, right? The connectivity within this country is something that the rest of the entire region needs. Your neighbors need, the rest of the Arab region needs. And that is going to be a critical solution to peace building, connecting the cities. I often say that whereas many political analysts want to promote state building, in fact, throughout history, it begins with city building. Building stable cities is how you build stable countries. We have to connect into those urban hubs, build them, stabilize them, and let that stability spread. And of course, nurture that global connectivity as well. At a time when people talk about borders and protectionism, as if the globalization can be turned on and off like a switch, we must remember that it is cities that drive global connectivity. And the decision-making in cities and the companies in cities, the leaders of cities, are saying the exact opposite of the populist, protectionist message that we hear from any number of leaders. It's not something that you can passively wait to make sure the system continues as it has been. You have to step up and take that lead. I also think it's worth embracing this greater Asian development. It is clearly one of the mega trends of the 21st century. To understand the ways in which the billions of people that lie to the east of here are recapturing that historical glory and connecting those sub-regions together into this Asian system is an irreversible process that will last decades into the future. But that does require then my final call to action, which is that you no longer think of yourselves as the Middle East. And I will challenge you, I will admonish you to go the entire rest of the day without using that term, Middle East. Let's see if you can do that. Thank you very much for having me here, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you. Thank you.